I would now like to call to order the 2019 Annual General Meeting of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. J'aimerais rappeler à l'ordre de l'Assemblée générale annuelle de 2019 de l'Autorité canadienne pour l'enregistrement Internet. There will be opportunities for questions to be posed at certain points throughout the AGM, and I'd quickly like to go over the procedures for that. During the AGM, we ask that you come to one of the two microphone stands to ask a question. And for those of you who are joining us by webcast, please click on the Ask a Question link on your screen, and then you can type in your question and submit it. And your question will be read aloud in the room on your behalf. And please, if you wouldn't mind, before asking a question, if you would state your name and affiliation if that is relevant. Questions during the AGM are reserved for members only. Now, when you registered, members would have received a kit and a folder, and I encourage you to review the materials inside. It includes today's agenda and CIRA's audited financials and report to members. And for those who are joining us by webcast, all of these materials are available on CIRA's website at cira.ca//AGM. So for voting instructions, since we are a member-based organization, only eligible CIRA members may vote. And as per CIRA's bylaws and the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, in order to vote in this AGM, you must have been a CIRA meeting for 21 days prior to today's AGM and continue to be a member in good standing as of today. Eligible members who are joining us via the webcast are able to vote, and they will receive instructions for when to do so during my presentation. So for the members here in the room, when a vote takes place, we would ask that everyone remain in the room and that you would show your vote by raising a voting card when the vote is called. And you will find this in your kit that you received at check-in. So this is your voting card. And when you vote, please hold it up high until you're asked to put it down, because we need to count every vote. And if you're joining us by webcast, when a vote is called, members, you will see a motion appear in a box on your screen, and simply click on your selection and your vote will be registered. In accordance with our bylaws, Brigitte Leblanc-Lapointe will act as secretary and I will act as chair. And I have been advised that we have the required quorum of 100 members present in the room and online. And with that, I declare the meeting duly constituted, and we will now proceed to the business at hand. Today's agenda was posted on the CIRA's AGM website on August 6th, 2019. And you will find a copy of the agenda in your kit given to you at check-in today and online on the CIRA website. Unless I hear objections, we will proceed with the agenda as distributed. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the verification of the 2018 AGM minutes, and a copy of the minutes from 2018 is also available on your kits and also online on CIRA's website. They were put online on August 6th, 2019. So if there are no objections, I'm looking around the room, I will verify the minutes as correct. The minutes stand verified. I'd like to begin my report to you by introducing the dedicated and hardworking members of your board who are in attendance today, and thank them for their contributions and support to CIRA. And I would ask if each board member would please stand up when I say your name. Alex Baraskow. Don Bowman, I think, was unable at the last minute to attend. Ryan Black, who is our chair of the Governance Committee. John Demko, our founder. Somewhere. Thank you. Andrew Escobar, of course, on stage. He's the chair of the Finance, Audit, Investment, and Risk Management Committee. Matthew Gamble. Thank you, Matt. Byron Holland, of course, who is the president and CEO on stage. Jill Kowalchuk, who is the co-chair of our Community Investment Committee. Rowena Liang. Rowena, thank you. Tyson McCauley, I think, might not be here. He's coming a few minutes later. Not look like here. Louise McDonald. Louise, thank you. Helen McDonald, of course, myself, the chair of the board. Pamela Miller is our government representative, and I understand she was unable to attend today. Bill Sandiford, who's the co-chair of our Community Investment Committee, and Rob Villeneuve, chair Market Strategy Committee. So, we are now halfway through the final year of CIRA's four-year 2017 to 2020 strategic plan, and we are aiming to finalize the next five-year plan later this calendar year. This has meant that the board and CIRA staff have spent considerable time over the last year reflecting on how well the current strategic plan has been implemented and the challenges the organization will face going forward. And I'm not going to talk much more about the new strategic plan other than to say we're hoping to be able to approve it at our November board meeting. But I do want to talk to you today about what the Board of Directors have been engaged in this last year. And our role is to provide oversight of the corporate goals and direction to make sure that they are consistent with CIRA's mandate, strategic plan, and values. We oversee the pace of progress against intended results. We also oversee the finances and spending to ensure that CIRA is sustainable and using scarce resources for the right purposes. You're going to hear in more detail from Byron as to CIRA's achievements, and you're going to hear more about our financial position. So I want to focus on a few aspects that I think are worthy of your attention, which also, I think, help illustrate the role of a board. CIRA has managed to buck the trend for many years of a flattening growth curve in domain name registrations worldwide. There are now over 2.8 million .ca domains under management. And 2 years ago, .ca domains grew by 5.4% compared to a global industry growth rate of 1.7. This last year, CIRA managed to grow by 3.6. So not as much as the years before, but by comparison, the industry average for the country code top-level domains was only 0.8%. So CIRA is doing extremely well by these measures, but we know that the net growth rate in domains under management was a double-digit percentage before 2013. So we have to assume that the future is likely to feature a further flattening growth rate, which makes the strategic direction approved by the board 4 years ago to pursue the development of what we call diversified services, services over and above what the essential core mandate of operating the .ca registry. It made these services very important. We want to be successful in diversifying our service offering so that we can maintain or increase the depth of public benefit programs that CIRA operates, and we want to keep the price we charge registrars attractive. One of the things the board did this last fiscal year was to review CIRA's statement of purpose. We are recommending to you, our members, that it be updated to better reflect CIRA's mandate and current activities, including our diversified services. And these proposed wording changes have been shared with you in recent months and are included in your booklets today. And as they're going to be voted on later in this meeting, I'm going to save my remarks as to why I think these changes are important. I'll save them for that time. Another thing the board did was to review the results of the cost allocation exercise. And this was a calculation of the full costs, both investments and expenditures of time by CIRA staff for all of the CIRA activities over a year. And this allowed us to look at whether the costs were appropriate in light of results, where we want to drill down further, and where we want to see better performance. Not surprisingly, we learned that 70% of all revenues go to support the core mandate of providing .ca registry services and the DNS infrastructure that protects the necessary user-to-registry functions. Not surprising. The board will continue to work with management on suitable performance metrics on how well our infrastructure and security investments are performing relative to increasing cyber attacks and to client needs. We want to ensure that CIRA continues to operate a safe, reliable, and secure .ca domain for all Canadians through world-class registry and DNS services. We learned that the new diversified services, as an aggregate, are not yet covering their full costs, although some are. We understand that there's more risk in this area, and that some innovative services are an immediate success and some are not. We also agreed that the services, some of them, have a public benefit aspect, and thus we shouldn't expect full cost recovery. And the board will continue to work with management to set firm timelines to cost recovery for those services that should be recovering costs. This past year, CIRA continued to grow its revenue from DZone Anycast DNS and DZone DNS firewall services. Anycast provides world-class DNS infrastructure for organizations in Canada and around the globe, and Firewall protects Canadian users and organizations from ransomware, phishing, and malware attacks. CIRA's team is to be congratulated on the successful migration of .ca to their new state-of-the-art registry called Fury. The Fury platform now hosts several other top-level domains, and we hope to see others come on board. Going forward, the board expects to see sustained development of the non.ca products and services. The board knows that CIRA staff are talented and thoughtful folks, and we are encouraging CIRA management to be ambitious and nimble in exploring new service opportunities. Another area of emphasis for the board over this last year was whether we could increase the impact of the public interest or public benefit investments we are making, what we call the donate activities. In fiscal year 2019, the organization's flagship granting fund contributed over $1 million to 28 different projects. Community groups, charities, academic institutions across the country received grants to improve access, digital literacy, and adoption. And these are all worthy projects, but the grants in the past, they've tended to be small, which makes it difficult to assess the longer-term impacts of these investments. And so the board approved an increase to the grant size so we could learn whether this change would better respond to needs. And the board will continue to assess as to whether further changes are needed to this program in this fiscal year. The granting program is not the only way that CIRA gives back to the internet community, and the board values CIRA's continued support in 2018-2019 for the development of Internet Exchange Points, or IXPs, which help make Canada's internet faster, safer, and more resilient. These IXPs are often they're often very small, they're run by volunteers in some cases, and so CIRA's governance advice and technical support are important. And we're very pleased that Iqaluit's Arctic IX is now in the development phase. We welcomed as a board CIRA's role in organizing the inaugural Canadian Internet Governance Forum, which brought internet policy stakeholders from across the country together in Toronto to discuss governance of the domestic and global internet. And the board continues to support the thought leadership from CIRA's participation in international fora like ICANN or the IGF and the Global Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network. Overall, the board is pleased with CIRA's accomplishments in the fiscal year 2019. The organization has delivered on its core mandate to manage .ca on behalf of all Canadians and delivered on its mission to help build a better online Canada. CIRA continues to invest time and money in initiatives that promote a safe, secure, and accessible internet in Canada. And as a mission-driven organization, reinvesting in the health of Canada's internet is an important part of CIRA's role. And I want to thank my fellow board members, as well as all CIRA staff, CEO Byron Holland, and the senior leadership team for all of their hard work this year. And I also want to thank you, all of our CIRA members, for your support and your engagement over this year. And I'd like to ask Byron Holland, CIRA's President and CEO, to take the stage now and share some of the highlights from 2018-19 and our corporate goals for the current 2019-20. And after that, my fellow board member, Andrew Escobar, Chair of our Finance Committee, will review our audited financial statements with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. So I'm going to start in a very Canadian way with an apology. I have kids. I'm not apologizing for them, but it's September. They go to school. They bring back colds and illness into my house, and I have succumbed. So I will try not to cough my way through the presentation, but no guarantees. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today, both in the room and on the webcast. Thank you very much to all the members who are here as well, and to today's speakers, Dr. Ann, who joined us this morning, and the panel will be here this afternoon. I think that was a really interesting start to our day, and privacy, of course, is something very near and dear to our own hearts at CIRA, so particularly relevant and germane to myself and to the team. But I'd also like to start by thanking the entire CIRA board, including our chair, Helen, and my fellow leaders at CIRA and our staff, because we had a very strong year overall from a domains under management perspective, from a revenue perspective, and from the projects that we executed on perspective. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. So fiscal 2019 was a very important year for CIRA. As Helen just touched on, it was the final year in a multi-year strategic plan. And we managed to do a number of very significant things, one being grow the core business. So .ca, of course, is our prime mandate and the core business. And as you've heard, there's some material headwinds in that industry writ large. But nevertheless, we continue to significantly outperform the market and had a good year in terms of developing the core business. We've continued to diversify and expand upon our product offerings as per our strategy. And I think we've also continued to really build out and expand the reach and access of our community investment program and the impact that it's had on the internet community in Canada. And finally, because of some of the new products and services that we're offering, we've also been able to protect more users, more organizations, more institutions, more companies in Canada with our cybersecurity products. So I want to go into a little more detail through the next few minutes, but suffice it to say that it's been an interesting year. It's been, I think, a really successful year in the overall strategic plan, where we've been able to really execute on the vision that we put forward several years ago in our plan. So just as a reminder, because sometimes people get confused because the dates don't line up, I'm talking about last fiscal year, which for us, our fiscal year was 2019, and it ran from April 1st, 2018 to March 31st, 2019. So our primary goal at CIRA, as expressed by our strategy, is to build a better online Canada. So that's our number one overarching overall goal. And under that fit a number of core strategic pillars that you can see on the screen behind me. I'm going to walk through essentially each one of these pillars and just touch on them, and we will have an opportunity for Q&A after, because I am going to touch on a number of things. So I just ask you, if there's something that doesn't make sense, you need clarification, we will have that opportunity at the end. So let's start with .ca. As everybody in this room knows, that is our core mandate. That is why CIRA came to be originally, and it always has been and always will be job number one. During the fiscal year, during the 2019 fiscal year, we exceeded 2.8 million, about 2.835 total .ca domains under management. We registered just over 500,000 new domains, which makes last year, in spite of the headwinds that we've been facing, the second best year on record. And in fact, in the past 4 years, 3 of the best years ever on record for CA in terms of new registrations have happened in the past 4 years. And I think that's a pretty significant accomplishment. When we look around the rest of the world and see our peers in the CCTLD community, and certainly in the GTLD community, there's very few registries in the world that are continuing to grow at the rate that we have been, even though it is declining, and that have registered that many absolute net new registrations. So we're definitely among the top registries in the world when it comes to net new registrations. So 2.834 million .ca domain names under management at the end of the last fiscal year. And that growth, as Helen mentioned, comprised 3.6% growth. Now, that may seem like a relatively small number, but relative to the industry, we are continuing to dramatically outperform the industry. But we also have to face the fact that we do seem to be at an inflection point where the days of double-digit growth are long behind us, and as an industry, we're moving towards what we call a technical crossover internally, but essentially we will move to roughly 1% or so growth over time, all other things staying the same. But still, our 3.6% dramatically outpaced the industry. The industry average last year was 0.08%, so we're well ahead of industry average. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. We're a mature legacy operator, like many of our peers around the world, and yet we continue to outperform, as we have over the last 5+ years. And it doesn't happen by accident. It takes a significant amount of hard work by the team, starting from the board and strategy and down through the execution, down to all the individual members in CIRA. Pardon me. But it's through the disciplined execution of that strategy that we managed to maintain our performance and continue to outperform the market through the last number of years. And I believe with the plan that we have and the plan that we're working towards for the next 5 years, we will still be able to outperform the market and deliver the quality of service that .ca holders expect. Now, how do we continue to outperform the market? As I said, it doesn't happen by accident. There's just a lot of planning and a lot of work that makes it happen. But also one of the things that makes us somewhat unique in the internet ecosystem, or the part of the internet ecosystem that we occupy, is we've been quite aggressive in terms of how we market and communicate to Canadians. Because we, and certainly I believe, that a key part of our mandate is not just to run the technology that makes this happen, but it's really about how do we actually get .cas into the hands of Canadians? How do we get Canadians online with their own presence? Their own presence online. And I make that point because that's very different than subjugating your presence to somebody else's brand, as we heard about this morning, on other people's platforms. And we truly believe, and I truly believe, that having your own space, place, website online under your own domain name is your real estate in the digital world. And it's part of our responsibility to help Canadians find their place in the digital ecosystem, with .ca domain names primarily. So the marketing effort has been a significant effort, both in terms of people, mind share, but also in terms of financial resources. And we have invested significantly, and I would say probably more than most CCTLD operators, in terms of getting that message out, helping Canadians understand domain names and getting their presence online. And this is just an example of how do we do that. We do mass media in certain markets, and we drive that awareness down into our channel partners, our registrars, who then help the end customer or the registrant actually get a domain name, and of course, often then websites, emails, and all the other products that they need to be online truly. But of course, if our goal is to build a better online Canada, we're not going to do that just by selling domain names. And that's why over the past few years, we've also really taken advantage of and begun to leverage our deep knowledge internally and our deep expertise in and around the domain name system, or the DNS. For those of you who are maybe a little bit new to CIRA, we don't just register .ca domain names, we also manage and operate the underlying DNS or domain name system that enables .ca domain names to be online, to be found. So the DNS, to some degree, essentially is the phone book of the internet. It helps you find the domain name that you're looking for, the one and only official one, and we operate a piece of that global internet phone book, and we do that through operating the DNS. But that's given us very significant expertise and a depth of knowledge about what the DNS is, how to operate it, but also what else can we do with it. And pardon me, we've done a number of things in terms of offering new products and services that leverage that core expertise around the DNS. And one of those is having built a cloud-based cybersecurity solution called dzone DNS Firewall. And over the past year, this firewall product has experienced significant growth, and we focused our efforts around firewall on a few particular verticals, usually in what we would consider underserved markets. So municipalities, universities, hospitals, school systems in particular. The kind of environments that are often financially challenged, as we all know. So we offer a secure outer DNS-based protection layer, or essentially a virtual firewall, that helps mitigate the inbound bad actors, phishing, malware, that type of thing. And, you know, if you think about those kinds of organizations, particularly hospitals, universities, think of the number of users of their networks, think of universities and schools and where young people are trying to get to online and the kinds of things that they may be doing. Often those networks are really subject to questionable activity. So DNS Firewall has become a very popular service in those communities, particularly in the education communities. And when we think about our strategic plan and we think about that overarching goal of building a better online Canada, and then we think about these other services that we're offering and the outcomes of those, you know, one of the examples that I like to use, and it's on the screen behind me, is that we have more than 400,000 young people, students, children, K-12 and university students, who are protected by CIRA's DNS Firewall. There's 400,000 young Canadians protected by our services. And to me, that's a perfect example of thinking about how can we build a better online Canada and how can CIRA do its part to do that. So I think DNS Firewall is a really concrete example of how we live the goal that we're trying to succeed at, which is build a better online Canada. Another product that we offer, another service that we offer is a service called dzone Anycast, DNS. It's been growing year over year. It was one of the first main services beyond .ca that we got into. And our Anycast service provides service for a number of top-level domains. Of course, customer number one is us, .ca. All those 2.8 million .ca domain names are served by our DNS Anycast service. But we also have many other top-level domains that use our service. I'm fortunate to say CIRA has a good reputation in the global community for the quality of service that we offer, the depth of our expertise that we have in-house, and 50 top-level domains. So top-level domain is anything to the right of the dot. So .ca is a top-level domain. .se for Sweden, top-level domain. .nl for the Netherlands, top-level domain. And then, of course, there's the GTLDs, ComNet, Org, and 1,000 others. And we provide our Anycast, we sell our Anycast service to 50 top-level domains around the world, including SE and NL that I've mentioned. So those happen to be also sophisticated, mature, large registries who look at the service that we offer, and they are educated buyers because they do what we do. They understand what we do, and they buy from us. So we've had very good success in those markets. Of course, DNS is not the only thing that we do. Running the registry itself is kind of the thing that most people know, that we run the registry for .ca. And as Helen just touched on, we developed and built over the last couple of years a new generation registry platform, which during the course of this past fiscal year, we migrated .ca, all those 2.8 million names, across from our 10-year-old registry onto our brand new next-gen leading-edge registry. You know, it was as big a project as an organization like us can do, and of course, absolutely as critical a project as an organization like us would ever undertake. And I'm certainly pleased to report that it went as planned, literally down to the minute, and we transferred more than 200 million records from the old registry onto the new registry and had it up and running in a matter of hours. And when you think of the scale and scope and criticality of that actual project, it was essentially the fastest cutover of a large-scale registry ever in the industry, and we did it without missing a beat. So that was, thanks. Needless to say, that is a team effort, starting with the board, who, you know, part of their core responsibility is managing risk, but also providing the resources to allow us to do that, right down to literally every single person in our shop touched that project at some time. So massive achievement, and certainly from my perspective, incredibly proud of the team who executed on it. Those are the main things that people know us for, DNS and the registry. But because of the world that we live in and the internet, innovation has to be a key part of what we do too. And a couple of years back, for those of you who have been coming to these AGMs over the years, you'll recall that we started talking about creating a group within CIRA Labs. And that was an area where we could kind of ring fence them, put them in a sandbox, so to speak, and allow them to do real innovation in and around the industry that we participate in and the spaces that we occupy. And when we talk about some of these new products and services, elements of them are the result of what bubbles up out of the lab. So the lab is starting to find its footing, gain traction, and allow CIRA in general and the lab in particular to work on these kinds of thorny cybersecurity problems in particular to help protect Canadians from malware, phishing, ransomware, and all the other kinds of cyber attacks that we see and hear about in the popular media. So that's kind of the quick tour of how CIRA helps build a better online Canada in terms of the core business that we're engaged in and how we generate our revenues, because as I think everybody here probably knows, we receive no funding from anybody. We sell domain names and other services in order to generate the revenues to allow us to execute on our core mandate and the other things that we do. And one of the key things that we do is invest in the Canadian internet in various ways and contribute back to the internet community. And as most of you know, we have quite a robust community investment program, the flagship of which is our granting program. But it also includes investments in other activities like internet exchange points, our own internet performance test, facilitating key meetings and conferences in Canada like the Canadian Internet Governance Forum and others. All different kinds of ways that we give back to and invest in the internet community in Canada. So our flagship program, as I mentioned, is our granting program. And we grant roughly $1.25 million a year through the program to worthy internet activities. The organizations have to be not-for-profit, academic, charities, those kinds of things. We don't invest in for-profit activities. And this past fiscal year marked the 5th year that we've done that. So we've invested just shy of $5.5 million into the grant program and into these worthy projects, roughly 130 projects over the course of the program. And these programs have a range of activities. And particularly they've been focused around digital literacy, infrastructure related to internet, academic research, cybersecurity, online security, kind of writ large. All activities focused around making the internet better or more useful to Canadians and citizens. And with 130 projects, there is quite a broad cross-section of them, and many of them have made significant impacts. You know, for example, we recently funded a project called Connected North, which delivers e-learning services to remote Indigenous communities and has dramatically ramped up the kind of content and the richness of content that they can receive in remote communities. We also supported Acorn Canada's research on internet access in low-income communities right across Canada. And that organization ultimately released a very significant report called Barriers to Digital Equity in Canada, which has received a lot of uptake in terms of mass media and awareness for the challenges that that particular segment of society experiences. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the projects that we funded through the funding arm of the Canadian Investment Program. Of course, that isn't the only way we do it. As I mentioned, we also invest much more directly in terms of not just dollars, but also our own resources, our people, our time, our expertise. And we do that in things like the Internet Governance Forum, the Canadian Internet Governance Forum, which is part of a larger Internet Governance Forum ecosystem. And that's where we convened a one-day meeting of civil society, government, business, technology, industry actors to really come together as thought leaders and discuss the significant internet-related issues of the day. So clearly in this past one, definitely included security, privacy, platforms. I mean, some of the big thorny issues that we're wrestling with that we heard about this earlier today. And of course, the other thing is the sort of pending advent of increased legislative and regulatory regimes across the Western world, of which Canada's likely to be no different. So a meeting like that, it doesn't just come together. It takes a lot of work by a lot of people, be it an original organizing committee, which had a number of participants, but certainly included CIRA staff members. When it came to the day itself, CIRA staff provided the resources for the facility and the people in the room to actually make it happen. And I'm pleased to report that it was a very well-received and successful day. And that's just an example of how CIRA, at an operational level, at a company level, contributes back to the internet community to help try to make it a better place. So our other major focus of the Community Investment Program more from a corporate standpoint, but also from a granting standpoint, is supporting IXPs, or Internet Exchange Points in Canada. And for those of you who've been with CIRA for a little while, you know that a few years back we took this on as a major challenge because there was really only one Internet Exchange Point in Canada, Torex, which is a very long established and successful Internet Exchange Point, but really there weren't any others in Canada. And we took it upon ourselves to try to facilitate a movement towards creating more of them because they increase the performance, the resiliency of the internet in Canada. They help in terms of jurisdictional data flows, maintaining them in Canada. They certainly can help in terms of mitigating the price of internet, especially transit and wholesale transit in Canada. And we've seen actually really good results on that front in some of the cities that these new internet exchange points are in. So this gives you a sense of how the IXP fabric has changed over the last 5 years. because everyone there except Torex, we were a catalyst for and an active participant in. Domestically, that's the kind of activity that we do. Internationally, we also play a significant role because, as I'm sure we all know, the internet is a global network of networks. What happens there impacts here. And what happens here can impact there, wherever there is in the world. And CIRA's played a very active role. The board has been very supportive of CIRA being an active participant in trying to express Canadian views, values, expertise, technology in the global internet ecosystem, particularly in the governance space, but also in the technical space. The slide behind me just shows you some of the forums that we participate in, be they technical or governance related. IETF being a particularly technical one, same with AARON. AARON is the organization that works on the numbers side of the address space, so IP addresses in the North American region. So this just gives you a flavor of where we participate, and we participate actively, whether it's myself, who's very active in the internet governance space, or our CTO, Jacques, who's very involved in the cybersecurity and technical space, and a number of other participants, or CIRA staff members who participate in the various forums, making sure that Canadian voices and values are heard as we shape technical standards, as we shape internet governance policies around the world. So as Helen mentioned, we're now in the final year of our current strategic plan, and we're in the process right now of finalizing our next plan, a 5-year plan. In fact, we had all-day board meeting yesterday where that was central to the discussion, and we have a number more coming up, something we've been working on for the better part of a year. But that plan, going forward, of course, will ensure that we continue to do everything that we can to stay ahead of the curve on domain names, continue to outperform the rest of the world to the best of our ability, continue the plan towards diversifying our businesses and services and how we can make the Canadian internet ecosystem a better place, and also, of course, how we can continue to develop the team, because sure, we run a lot of gear and we run a lot of infrastructure, but at the end of the day, our business is a people business because it's an expertise business. It's a knowledge business. So making sure that we have the best, most inclusive, most high-performing team that we can is a core part of our strategy as well, because it takes all of that and more to build a better online Canada. So, as I said earlier, success doesn't just happen. It takes a bunch of hard work. It takes a bunch of smart people, all pointed in the same direction, rowing together, more or less, to accomplish what we've been able to accomplish over the past fiscal year. So, as I started with, I'd like to absolutely thank my board, the CIRA board, and our chair for the support and the challenge that they have, the challenge function that they've offered me and my senior leadership team. But most especially, I'd like to thank the team, the actual employees of CIRA. There's about 100 of us in total who run this entire thing, whether it's granting programs, internet governance policy, registry, DNS, other services, all those things that we just talked about. There's only about 100 of us who do all of that. So I would like to most definitely thank the whole team for that, and my team that's here in the room for putting on the event today. So with literally half a year to go right now as we wind down this final bit of the current strategic plan, I just wanted to say also thank you to the membership for having supported us along the way, for having provided feedback and input to the CIRA team, to myself. As you know, we run member events, not just an AGM, but we run member events across the country, often in conjunction with board meetings, and we get lots of feedback. And the one thing I think we all know about the internet community, we're not shy to provide feedback and input. So thank you to all of the people who help us develop our strategies and thoughts as we deliver the business to you and as we go out into the world and try to express Canadian input into not just a better online Canada, or better online in Canada, but a better online globally. So, thank you very much. That concludes my report from the President's standpoint. And now I'd like to invite Andrew Escobar, CIRA's Chair of the Finance, Audit, Investment, and Risk Committee, to deliver his report.
All right. Get that a little higher. Good morning, everyone. Can go off script just for a second because Dr. Ann Kabukian is a personal hero of mine as well. This morning I mentioned on Twitter how excited I was to have her in the room today and how I thought that she would be one of the most exciting speakers we've ever had at an AGM. And I sent my apologies to Biz Stone, who is one of the co-founders of Twitter, and he replied back and said, "That's okay, I'm in great company," and I agree with him. So thank you very much, Dr. Kabukian, for joining us this morning. So yeah, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Escobar. I am the chair of the CIRA Finance, Audit, Investment, and Risk Management Committee, which I'm going to just refer to today as the Audit Committee. Our job on the Audit Committee is to ensure that CIRA's budget and financial activities are aligned with the organization's objectives, that risks are noted and managed, and that the organization has the financial resources it needs to achieve its goals. As part of our mandate, we review the financial performance of CIRA on a quarterly basis. This includes a review of CIRA's proposed annual audit plan, the performance and services provided by the external auditor, the resultant audited financial statements, and the independent auditor's report. That is what I'm here to talk with you about today. A full copy of the audited financial statements and the independent auditor's report were circulated in advance of our AGM. For those of you in the room today, a reference copy has been included in your information package. Those joining by webcast can find them on our website at cira.ca/financials. Today, I have good news. Our auditors at KPMG are of the opinion that our financial statements presented an accurate picture of CIRA's financial position, operational results, and changes in net assets and cash flows. This audit was completed in accordance with the accounting standards of a not-for-profit organization and represent a clean opinion from the auditors. Simply put, we passed. For those of you reviewing the documents, you will see that the structure of the financial statements, note disclosure, and significant accounting policies are consistent with how we presented them last fiscal year. To keep my presentation brief, I'll touch on some key financial and operational aspects of our business, but I encourage you to take a full look at the documents at your leisure. Here are what we see as 4 major highlights from CIRA's past fiscal year. First, CIRA is in a strong financial position. We have a healthy balance sheet with nearly $39.5 million in total assets, of which $26.1 million are held within our restricted investment portfolio. Our investments are managed by Phillips Hager North with oversight from the Audit Committee. Second, our registry internal control framework and design are strong. The Audit Committee oversaw a review of CIRA's registry internal control framework design and the data conversion on the migration to our new state-of-the-art registry platform, Fury. To make sure we are keeping sensitive registrant and registrar information safe, the Audit Committee worked to ensure that there was a sufficient level of security across our organization's registration revenue processes. This meant reviewing role-based permissions as well as secondary approvals for the registry platform. That's a mouthful. Let me give you a sense of the scale we're working with. Helen and Byron just touched on how we transferred 2.8 million .ca domains over to Fury this past year. But we didn't just transfer over 2.8 million .cas. We also transferred over 200 million records of customer history and payment data generated over the past 20 years. This is a lot of important data, and a strong internal control framework is necessary to keep these records safe and secure. The board is happy to report that CIRA has a strong set of procedures in place. Third, once again, we outperformed our peers in fiscal year 2019. Although we began to feel the industry-wide downturn of domain sales around December, we still managed to reach 2 major milestones. First, our .ca registration revenues topped $25 million for the first time in the organization's history. Second, our new product diversification strategy gained traction with our DNS, registry, and other cybersecurity revenues surpassing the $1 million plateau. This is a tremendous accomplishment for an organization transitioning from a single service company to a multi-product entity servicing both domestic and international markets. As I mentioned earlier, registration growth rates have been slowing for country code top-level domain name operators worldwide, known as simply CCTLDs in the industry. With greater choice in generic top-level domains and social media platforms giving users and businesses an online presence, it's clear that the CCTLD market is maturing and facing tough competition. And of course, .ca is not immune to global market trends. While year-over-year percentage growth rates have declined, we still have managed to outperform our CCTLD peers. Fiscal year 2019 was no different. This past year, we managed to achieve a growth rate of 3.6%, nearly 5 times higher than the global industry average of 0.8%. We ended the year with a total of 2.8 million domains under management, an absolute increase of approximately 97,000 domains over the closing balance from the prior fiscal year. Fourth, and finally, we've put more money into our marketing strategy. To help counter the industry-wide downturn of new domain registrations, CIRA has increased investments in our advertising and brand awareness activities and invested in promotional partnerships with our registrars. We believe that these are critical in a more competitive and crowded online market space. Of course, this is just a high-level overview that only begins to scratch the surface. I invite you to review the financial documents contained in your information packages to get a complete picture of CIRA's performance over the past fiscal year. For those joining online, you can find everything we just discussed at cira.ca/financials. And of course, we are more than happy to answer any questions you might have with respect to the financial statements in our question period at the end. That's it for me now. Thank you for your attention. I now invite our chair, Helen McDonald, back to the podium for the appointment of the auditors by you, our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We will now be presenting 2 motions. One is for the appointment of CIRA's external auditors, and the second is for the proposed amendments to CIRA's statement of purpose. So let me remind you again, process for questions and discussion relating to the motions when they're presented. For members in the room, if you could please line up at one of the 2 microphones in the aisles, and I'll call upon you one at a time. And in the interests of time and fairness to each member, I would ask that each of you limit yourself to a single question. For those members joining us by webcast, please click on the Ask a Question link on your screen, and then type in your question and submit it so we can read it aloud on your behalf. And before asking a question, please state your name and with whom you're affiliated, if relevant. And as this is a meeting for CIRA members, I would ask that only members participate in this portion of the meeting. If your question has been posed already, I would also ask you to refrain from asking it again. After questions, we open for discussion. And the process of discussion is going to follow a similar process. So, as with the questions, please use one of the microphones in the aisles, or if online, click the Ask a Question link on your screen, and then you can type in your comment and submit it, and your comment will be read aloud in the room. Again, in the interests of time and fairness to each member, I'd ask that you limit yourself to a single comment, and before posing a comment, please state your name and affiliation. And similarly, I would ask only CIRA members pose comments in this portion of the meeting, and if someone before you has posed a similar comment, please refrain from repeating it. We want to have an opportunity to hear from as many of you as possible. So first, we're going to move to the appointment of the auditors. KPMG has agreed to serve as CIRA's auditors until the next annual general meeting. And before we move to questions or discussion, May I please have a motion from a member to reappoint KPMG, I saw Matt first, as CIRA's auditors, and could I get one of the seconds? Bill, thank you very much. Do any members have a specific question with respect to the appointment of the auditors? Okay, hearing no questions, seeing none on the screen, I'd like to move to discussion of the motion. Are there any comments that members would like to make? Any further discussion? No? Nothing on the screen. Thank you for your questions and discussion of the motion. I'm going to remind you of your cards. We're now going to move to voting on the motion as set out in the screen. Eligible members may vote by raising their voting card once the vote is called. If you're an eligible member, you would have found that card in your AGM kit you received at check-in today, and you've seen what it looks like. When you vote, please hold it up high until you're asked to put it down. This gives us a chance to count every vote for those who are first in favor, then against, and those who wish to abstain. And again, for those of you on webcast, when a vote is called, you'll see the motion appear on your screen. Simply click on your selection and submit, and your vote will be automatically registered. So if you're on the webcast, please vote now. And for those of you in the room, all in favor, please raise your voting cards now. Keep it up. We have people running around the room counting. So I'm going to assume now that we've had time to count. No one's telling me otherwise, so thank you. Put your cards down. For those opposed, please raise your voting card now. No one in the room. I'm just going to wait for a moment to see if anything's coming on screen. Julie, no. Anyone who wishes to abstain, please raise your voting card now. I see 3. And there may be others online. Thank you. If you could put your cards down, we'll wait till all the votes are tallied. And I'm waiting for something to appear on the screen. Motion has passed. Thank you very much. KPMG will serve as CIRA's auditors until the next annual general meeting. Second, let's move to the amendments to CIRA's statement of purpose. This is really, why are we doing this? This is really to align our statement of purpose with the current activities of the organization. CIRA is a not-for-profit organization incorporated under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, and under this act, not-for-profit organizations are required to set out a statement of purpose in their articles of incorporation, and this is a statement that describes the goals or objectives of the organization. The language in CIRA's statement of purpose was last updated in 2006, and since then, CIRA's activities have expanded and evolved over time. At its meeting in last November, CIRA's Board of Directors approved amendments to CIRA's statement of purpose that we thought better reflect the organization's current activities. And set out on the slide above are the amendments to the statement of purpose. And these amendments propose to accomplish the following. In B, we have in red, domain name system DNS. This reflects that CIRA has for a number of years now been providing both professional registry services, DNS Anycast, firewall services, and other related services that enhance the security and protection of Canadians online. And we've been talking today, Byron and I, about DNS Anycast and firewall services that are being provided to municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals. We also deleted a line comparable to other major and international internet registries. CIRA is a major internet registry, and we don't think we should be limited by what other registries may be doing. The amendments to C provide more clarity regarding the internet-related activities provided by CIRA. The term internet-related activities is very broad. The changes to C narrow these activities and reflect that the activities, both domestic and internationally, that CIRA does to promote good governance, development, and the use of the internet are for the country of Canada. These include initiatives like CIRA's Community Investment Program, the granting program, Canada's Internet Exchange Points, the IXPs, engagement in international organizations like ICANN, and launching the Canadian Internet Governance Forum in conjunction with other organizations. And it's important to note that these changes don't really change what we're doing, but they simply align our statement of purpose with our current activities. So before we move to questions or comments, may I please have a motion by a CIRA member, thank you, Matt, to pass the special resolution. And will a member, thank you, Bill, please second the motion. Do members have specific questions with respect to the amendments to CIRA's statement of purpose? Yes, sir.
Hi, Brett Delmage. I'm an independent news publisher located here in Ottawa. I generally support the amendment. Mm-hmm. I have one small concern and possibly would like to move an amendment on it. In our daily lives, everywhere we look, we're surrounded or have no choice but to do business increasingly with U.S. corporations, whether it's Home Depot, Staples, Starbucks, Google Corporation, Facebook Corporation. It's getting depressing and increasingly more difficult, I find, to do, to even have a choice to do business in Canada with Canadians. One thing I like coming to CIRA meetings is I feel very much Canadian here. All the talk, all the direction, all the purpose is by and for Canadians. And so that is an amendment I'd like to see in the language, very subtle, but I think, or very small, but I think it's important. The for Canada is a bit vague to me, and I would like to propose an amendment that it be changed for and by Canadians. For and by Canadians. Just a change to keep the focus on the direction is by Canadians, for Canadians. For Canada, I don't know. McDonald's Canada is for Canada, but really they're a U.S. corporation. And I'd like to keep the focus here because CIRA is Canadian, Canadian members, to keep that focus.
We had a bit of discussion around, is it for Canadians, is it by Canadians, is it for Canada? And we felt that for Canada captured both the, when I look at ICANN, when you're trying to set out international governance rules, the beneficiary is less directly to you or me, more to for Canada. We thought that for Canada would also include Canadians. It's for Canada, it's for Canadians. It covers both aspects. It can't really be, in my mind, by Canadians, because sometimes we're engaging in international discussions, multi-stakeholder fora, so it's not just Canadians who are doing these things. So I hear your point. I want to encourage, are there other questions that might come up? And commentary, discussion of that or other topics.
I'm just concerned, I guess, that although CIRA is very strongly Canadian right now, and members here have to be Canadian to get a .ca domain, etc. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned about the future and where things could shift, and that we could just become, overrun with other interests outside the country.
Are you concerned about
other relationships? I like what CIRA is doing now, basically, and I'd like to ensure we serve our fellow citizens here, and we're not just being served, or serving outside Canadians.
So if the question is around, are we going to keep the Canadian restriction? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not mine, sorry.
I don't have a problem with anything that's happening now. It's the future I'm looking forward to, and these are usually longer future-looking statements.
Maybe I could just add a couple comments. So, as a general notion, I absolutely agree with you. CIRA, CA, for Canadians, by Canadians. There was lots of discussion on this language. So one thing I want to assure you is there was lots of talk. Every word here got debated, discussed, weighed back and forth, and certainly something like this did. To Helen's point, we believe that For Canada captured the essence of it, because part of the pragmatic reality for us is we're a piece of a global interoperable network of networks. And I don't know if you recall seeing a slide up there of the world, and it had a bunch of purple dots sprinkled around the world. Those are our physical points of presence. We have racks in servers, in data centers that we run to make all of this run. And we have to engage non-Canadians to do that often. Because I mean, we're racking servers in foreign jurisdictions and other people's data centers. So I'll be a little bit uncomfortable saying it's only by Canadians, because that's not the pragmatic reality of the business that we're in an international network of networks. So I just want to offer you that perspective as to why some wording like this is there. But the other thing that may be, I think, more important to this discussion is what you touched on regarding what we would call Canadian Presence Requirements, or CPR. To get a .ca, you have to be legally Canadian in some way, whether you're a citizen, a landed immigrant, permanent resident, institution, corporation, but you have to be legally tied to Canada to get a .ca, and that's not up for discussion. That CPR for .ca holders is just the law of the land at CIRA. It has occasionally surfaced in boardroom conversations because we get outside input that we should do something about that. And Helen can obviously speak for the board more than I will, but what I can say is over my years with multiple boards and a number of board members, there is zero interest or uptake in that. There is 100% support for CPR, which to me really gets to the heart of what you're asking. So I would just suggest we take the issue on board very seriously, but we address it in a slightly different way, and that's through CPR. So I would just offer you those two, the pragmatic point and the essence of CIRA point.
Thank you. And I'm also going to encourage, just say that we've got text out, you've had text, you've had time to think about it. We can't really take on board any proposed edits or wordsmithing. It's either you like it, you vote against it, you vote for it. But I do want to continue with the questions. And I understand we have Paul Anderson online who has asked a question. What consideration was given when developing these changes to limiting activities CIRA undertakes to those where the commercial sector or other Canadian organizations are not already filling the need? So should we be staying out of where the commercial sector is present or is active? And Paul goes on to say, I realize the existing ones do not limit these activities today, but would like to understand what thought was given to this. We have this discussion a lot about how far do we stay away from what is already going on in the private sector or what our partners or registrars might be doing. We don't want to compete with them. But on the other hand, there are some places, and I think of some of the Anycast services, where there might be some private sector activity, but they're not really engaged in assisting the municipalities or the hospitals. They're focused on different players. So we tend to see it as, why don't we keep to unmet needs? Why don't we focus on the unmet needs, recognizing that over time things may change and the private sector may engage much more in that. But no, this isn't part of what we were trying to accomplish with these changes. We were trying to better reflect the range of activities we're currently doing. I've got another question online. Why is increasing use of .ca explicitly part of your statement of purpose? because it's so built into our mandate that this is what we want to do. Did we need to build it in? We didn't feel there was a need to change since it's been our goal and the aim of this organization to make sure that everyone who wants or needs a .ca can have it. Bruce Easton-Scory, I forgot to name who had asked the last question, asks, so are all the services for this webcast supplied by Canadians? Hard point to push, but I like it. Sorry about this web. I'm sorry, I'm looking for questions that would hold to the resolution, and I'm missing the link between that question and this resolution, so sorry, I do want to focus on the, sir, at the microphone.
Hi. Oh, she was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble seeing with the light in my eyes. First.
Yes, hello. My name is Helen Escobar. I'm a web and multimedia developer, and I took interest in CIRA last year because I recommend domain names to my clients. I'm a freelancer. And I was wondering, since CIRA expands a little bit in services, what kind of competition is CIRA expecting to go against? Probably like, I'm thinking about international competition. Would it be in DNS or anything else?
Could I get the question linked to a specific part of the resolution where we would expect to see competition? I'm
Well,
trying to focus on the wording changes.
It's more like when it's said by Canadian, so since CIRA, I guess, is trying to focus their service in Canada, I was wondering if there's anything, because it's, let's say, domain names, it's not something that's particularly unique to Canada. So what kind of competition does it expect to go against? Or this year, for example, I think Mr. mentioned earlier. Sorry there.
Remember, we are not changing the...
I'm not saying changing. I'm just curious about in those lines if CIRA kind of includes that they plan on going toward or staying really Canadian, only focusing on Canadian services.
I would have said our big competitor is .com, but...
Yeah, I would, I mean, I'm not sure that where we're thinking about going over the next 5 years is materially different than where we are right now. Because when we think about the domain name business, you know, this may be my personal pet peeve, but often people say, oh, well, you're a monopoly, to which the word monopoly has very specific meaning. And of course, when you're a distant number 2 in your own market with 1,000 competitors, I don't think we would fit any economist definition of the term. So the reason I make that point is we compete against international companies all the time, every day, right now in Canada. Because you can buy .com, .net, .guru, .app, whatever you want. There's 1,000 choices you can make, of which .ca is but one. So we are competing against those folks, international competitors all the time right here on our own home turf. And we will continue to do that, but we are also doing it in some other lines of business, like Firewall or Anycast, where the majority of our customers right now are Canadian customers. So we'll continue to do that. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but we also participate in the international environment, particularly around organizations like ourselves. Because of the expertise and the infrastructure that we have, other people in our business recognize that, and we sell capacity to them internationally. We do that today. We will likely continue to do that tomorrow, regardless of what happens, bringing it back to what we're doing right now, special resolution, regardless of what happens in fine-tuning the purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hello, my name is Eric. I own a personal blog.ca. So I noticed that the government of Quebec, they have their own domain called .Quebec. It's under the new generic top-level domain program by ICANN. And they have their own registration authority similar to CIRA. It's called Point Quebec. So they have their own website very similar to CIRA. I was wondering if they are working with you guys, and also if CIRA is looking forward to buy generic domains like .Ontario, for example, .Alberta. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to make a link to the wording changes that we're proposing. And I'm missing the link. I understand that some of the location domains .Ontario, .Quebec may be of interest, but and maybe a growing market, but how do I link that? How do I link your question to the specific wording changes we've suggested?
No, I'm just wondering if...
I mean, if it's a broader question not linked to this, there will be a period shortly after this to ask those kinds of questions, but I really need to get through this to find out whether it's going to pass or not.
All right.
I'm sorry. So please come back during the Q&A at the end. I think I've got one more here, sir.
Yes, I'm Colin Cantley. I am a .ca domain owner because I chose to set up a hosted email with a provider and chose .ca as the place to put it. My question is about this item about the statement of purpose. You mentioned that promoting the growth of the .ca domain is part of the mandate and therefore doesn't need to be in the statement of purpose. So if the mandate is also part of the Articles of Incorporation, that would make sense. But if the mandate you're talking about isn't in the Articles of Incorporation, then the only place a mandate exists is in the statement of purpose. I don't actually know either way. I haven't read the Articles of Incorporation, but maybe the board could reflect on that for the future, because if the only thing in the Articles of Incorporation that gives the corporation a mandate is the statement of purpose, then maybe you want to think about whether you need to add something else to the statement of purpose in future. I am going to vote in favor of this change because it certainly does bring the language more into alignment with the current activities, and that's always a good thing.
Thank you very much for that. That's a thoughtful suggestion. It will be one that we will take back and consider, and I'm looking at Albert to make sure we've taken a note of that, to take a look at those. Sorry. Whoa, there went that microphone. If there are no further questions, I'm going to ask if there would be any discussion you would like to have of the motion. Are there members with specific comments to make, not questions at this time? I see no movement in the room, and I see no traffic on the website, so I want to thank you for your questions. And what discussion there was, and we'll move to voting on the motion as set out in the screen. So according to Section 197 of the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, this is considered a special resolution which requires a 2/3 majority vote. So we can, do I not need to first get a motion, Albert? Well, sorry, okay. Then we're going to proceed with the vote, and I'm going to ask all those in favor, please raise your voting cards now. And if you're on the webcast, please vote now, and please keep them up because we'll be running around counting. I'm thinking we've had enough time. Thank you. For those opposed, please raise your voting card now, or show on screen. Yep. Thank you. For those who abstain, please raise your voting card now. Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to wait until we get all of the votes tallied. I think the room supported it, but one never knows what's happening on the webcast. Overwhelmingly passed. Thank you very much. Motion is carried. The statement of purpose of the organization is now amended. So now we are at the general questions from members. So there are the two microphones. I'm going to encourage you to use those, line up, and for those on webcast to click on and ask a question. So you can type it in and submit it, and your question will be read in the room on your behalf. And if again, you could please tell us your name and affiliation before asking your questions. As this is a meeting of members, we'll start by taking questions from members. We need to keep an eye on the clock, and we'll open the floor to additional questions if time permits. So I'm going to start with you, sir, because it was a question around, I'm going to ask Byron to come with me, because often these questions are not really something a board member or a board chair can easily answer. But, sir, if you want to phrase your question one more time.
Sure, no problem. As far as I know, like CIRA is the only registration authority for Canadian domains, but the government of Quebec is pushing their own domain and their own registration authority called Point Quebec. So I'm wondering if they are working with CIRA, and also if CIRA also looks forward to expand their domains, like besides .ca. Are we going to have like .Ontario or something like that? Thank you.
So Point Quebec or .Quebec is a GTLD, a generic top-level domain, like .com, .net.org, Guru, whatever. And they are very different than country code top-level domains, .ca, .uk, .au for Australia, etc. Country code domains like CA are operated, quote, owned and operated by a country code manager, which in this case is CIRA. .Quebec is a private entity in the generic top-level domain space, so it's actually quite different than what we do. We certainly know, I know those guys. We absolutely interact with them. In fact, sometimes we do some joint work in the international community, ICANN and such. But they use a different registry operator than us. So no, we don't run their platform. I think that's probably the first question. And then the second question, would CIRA consider buying, because that's what you do, buying another generic top-level, or buying a generic top-level domain like .Ontario or .Alberta or something? I think the answer to that is no. We provide back-end registry services to top-level domain operators. In fact, we do that today. So .kiwi is an example. We run their back-end registry for .kiwi. We could do that for .Quebec. We don't right now, but we could. But we are not in the business of actually buying and owning generic top-level domains. And I never say never, but I don't see appetite for that for CIRA.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question online from Bruce Eason saying, and I think I mentioned it before, so are all the services for this webcast supplied by Canadians? Hard point to push, but I like it. Byron.
I'm going to admit that's probably a little more granular than I have all the answers to. However, most of the people in the room who are running it, I'm going to assume are Canadians, but I haven't checked their passports. I'm not sure. Julie, as a webcast service? All Canadian. There you go. Voice of authority from the back.
So could we go to this gentleman at this microphone, please?
Hi, Brett Delmage. Byron, about 5 years ago, we talked about IXPs in Canada, and I'd like to congratulate Sarah and you on the extensive continuing development of those in support of jurisdictional data flows, as you call it, and keeping Canadian internet traffic in Canada. I'd like to ask about something that's a bit technical, but it'll be familiar, I'm sure, to a bunch of people in the room. The big elephant in the room, DNS over HTTP, which is being, as I'm sure you're aware, rolled out in Google Chrome and Firefox, two browsers to start. They're going to start sending everyone's very sensitive DNS traffic to something like Cloudflare or a US internet-based server. Where does CIRA stand on this? What do you perceive as the issue there, and where are you going with it?
So the short answer is we don't have a stance yet. I mean, this is still pretty, so we pay very close attention to it. In fact, Jacques, our CTO, is a member of the Security and Stability Advisory Committee to ICANN, which has a lot of oversight over this space. So Jacques, as our CTO, is in the thick of the discussion. But I would also say right now it's still very much a discussion, and you've already seen organizations like Mozilla, Firefox, kind of back off a pretty hard stance that they came out with. In the IETF, or the Internet and Engineering Task Force, where the standards are made, still very much a discussion. So from a CIRA standpoint, we are very much involved in the discussion, aware of the situation, but consider it evolving and don't have a defined policy stance on it yet, because, I mean, there are puts and takes to that issue. But let me just say, I feel like I may be talking to you. The broader room, DOH, as it's often referred to, is essentially a new standard that's evolving, that changes the nature of DNS traffic and how that traffic happens and where it's encrypted, and starts sending the traffic fully encrypted from the browser over to the recursive servers. So again, that might not be this perfect conversation for a broad audience right now. Let me leave it with, it's an issue we should all have some awareness, general awareness of, because it's an important issue to how the internet functions and what parts and where and why are certain parts encrypted, because that is a big change and has ripple effects and impacts to operators like us, to law enforcement, to all kinds of different actors, and it impacts them in different ways. But it's very much an evolving situation that we're paying close attention to, and if you want nitty-gritty detail, I suggest you talk to Jacques, who's right there, who's our CTO, who can talk a lot more about the pure tech of it.
I just quickly say,
I
hope that CIRA will follow this up, because this is a kind of a privacy discussion today, and this is very important. Thank you.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we're running behind. We have 4 people up, nothing on the screen. So I'm going to ask for very brief and pointed questions and brief answers if we could.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm really good at those.
So my name is Tawa Minane Tardif. So including today's AGM, the last 3 AGMs have been here in Ottawa, and the last 4 have been in Ontario. Does the board intend to hold future AGMs elsewhere in Canada?
We consider it, and part of the consideration is where are we going to get turnout and therefore quorum. And Ottawa, Toronto, not sure how easy it was in Montreal, have worked for us. It also makes it, of course, very cost-effective, given so many of the people supporting this are all Ottawa-based. So we do try and consider whether we can move out, but we also rely on our member events to try and provide us an opportunity as board members and as CIRA management and staff to go around the country. So we do consider it. Can I tell you when the next meeting will be out of town? No, I don't have that answer. It's something we consider every year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We understand the importance of trying to get out.
And
Yes.
Helen, could I just add to that?
Yeah.
We do because we're very aware of that exact issue, we run member events, so not a full AGM like this, but actual physical member events in cities across Canada every year. And I mentioned earlier, we often hold a board meeting against a member event, so board meeting one day, member event the next or that evening, so that members from different cities can interact directly with board members themselves and CIRA staff too. So we try to have that interaction, we just do it in a different way than AGMs.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Jerry Lowry. I'm going to try and keep the background to my question as short as possible because of the time constraints. I've been a .ca member owner way back since ability.on.ca was registered with the University of British Columbia. When I go to the .ca WHOIS website, something has changed. And what has changed, and I encourage everybody to do this, you might find that all your entries are redacted. Now, Dr. Kevorkian said that, what were her words roughly, that the fate of personal information should be controlled by the people who hold it. There's a flip side to that coin. It's related to other things Dr. Kevorkian mentioned, such as bots, fake websites, and so forth, that if registration information is not available, just as we have to have a driver's license, a health card with information on them, that it turns out that practically every domain that you go and search for on the CIRA.ca WHOIS is redacted. Now, that's interesting. I had to go jump through hoops to get mine unredacted. During that time, I learned that ICANN has nothing to do with CC-TLDs. And the feedback I got was that this redaction is occurring because of things like the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which is a European Union thing, not a Canadian thing. That's Canadian sovereignty being overruled by the EU, okay? Now,
Sir, can I really need the question.
okay, well, the question basically is, we have to look at they're not hiding, WHOIS information. Now, if somebody's doing business on the internet, I should be able to see who's behind their website. And the question is CIRA going to address it? Because it's a very important issue. I don't know why organizations like Homeland Security have even allowed this to happen, because it's also .com accounts and so forth.
WHOIS.
So that's the question. How is CIRA going to address it? I strongly believe it's a sovereignty issue, and it's a personal choice issue, and it should be, I wasn't even notified that my information had been redacted.
Sir,
that's
thank
the
you for the question.
So the question is around WHOIS and the information that gets shared publicly?
No, the question is, why are we hiding information that should be public?
Okay, well, in your opinion, it should be public. But what I'm saying is the WHOIS as a service, if you look up a domain name, just for everybody, if you look up a domain name, there is information available about that domain name. There are fundamentally two categories, personal and business. And business information, so if a business has a website, chapters.ca, all of the WHOIS information is available. If it's an individual, a citizen, by definition, that personal information is not made public by CIRA. So that is CIRA policy and has been since 2008, which essentially was an outflow of the Canadian, no, it has nothing to do with GDPR. It's 2008, GDPR came out in 2015. This is an outflow of Canada's PIPEDA legislation in the early 2000s, and we implemented in 2008 the privacy regime that we have now. It is definitely different than GDPR. and long predates it, and certainly different than the generic top-level domain space, com.net.org, those guys, although now all of them are moving to GDPR-friendly rules, let's say. So from a privacy standpoint, CIRA took a pretty progressive stand in 2008 around personal information, not corporate, personal, and continues to stand by that privacy protection for individuals. It has nothing to do with Homeland Security or GDPR. It's strictly CIRA.
Are you telling me if I
I'm
go
sorry.
look up
I'm sorry,
a business,
sir.
a Canadian business,
Sir?
the information will be there?
Sir, I'm sorry to say we are now well over time. We're half an hour over. I would encourage you to take an opportunity to get further answers, but I'm afraid we've run out of time for questions at this meeting. So those who are still in line, and I know there were some online, I'm going to ask, I'm sorry, but we need to continue. We've got a panel and so on. There are a number of staff. You can recognize them with the gray shirts. There are board members. Please take an opportunity in the period after to ask the questions you need. We really have to conclude the rest of not the AGM part, but the rest of the meeting we've got. So it's time to adjourn the official portion of this meeting, and that means I require a motion to conclude the meeting. Thank you, ma'am. And can I ask thank you back there, to second the motion? And we'll now proceed with the vote. If you could just let me know that we can adjourn and just hold them up to make sure that thank you. Keep holding them just a minute more. Yes? Do we have anyone who would like to abstain? And anyone who would like to object? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that we have, maybe it's a good sign of success that we've run a little long, but clearly there are lots of questions that you would like to ask. And so I would like to ask Tanya to come back and try to get us back on track. Thank you very much.